The Sumerians, the starting point of human history.
The ancient Mesopotamians also had a very rich and developed religious.
Exactly 5,000 years ago, a people lived between the Farad and Dijla rivers. They built the first cities in history. They built the world not with stone, but with ideas. They were called the Sumerian people, the inventors of writing, the pioneers of astronomy, the first mathematicians. But one morning, they vanished from history. No traces of war were found, nor any signs of a plague. It was as if a people, by collective decision, had vanished from the face of the earth. For centuries, historians asked the same question. Where did the Sumerians go? There was no answer until 2023, when DNA spoke. Scientists found something unexpected in the marsh waters of southern Iraq, an echo from 5,000 years ago. Not bones, not soil, living genes. Those genes belonged to the Sumerians, but not in Iraq, in the marshes of southern Iran, in living, breathing people who speak a forgotten language. The Sumerians wrote the first word in human history, and that word was An, meaning sky. They saw themselves as children of the gods, and their tablets read exactly as follows. The Anunnaki descended from the sky and gave us wisdom. Some dismissed this sentence as myth. Others called them gods from outer space. But no one considered that there might be a real genetic link behind this story, until DNA revealed itself where archaeology fell silent. The Anunnaki in Sumerian mythology, according to some genetic researchers, may not mean descended from the sky, but rather came from other lands. So perhaps they weren't gods, but a new human species. And with their arrival, the fate of humanity changed. History tells us they are gone. Archaeology tells us about their end. The Akkadians rose, the Assyrians expanded, the Babylonians ruled. But genetics says they were all wrong, because DNA speaks more truthfully than excavations. The soil hides the story of cities, but blood does not forget the story of humans. A new genetic project that began in the 2020s analyzed the remains of the Ubaid culture. The Ubaids came just before the Sumerians, and genetically they were almost identical. So Sumerian civilization did not arise from scratch. It was a genetic continuity. The knowledge passed from one culture to another was also a continuation of blood, and that blood is still alive. In 2023, Cambridge University, Basra University, and Trinity College Dublin conducted a joint study. Project name, Ancient Mesopotamian Genome Project. Objective, to understand the origins of the people living in the marshes of southern Iraq. No one expected anything revolutionary, but the result shattered the established history. The marsh people, marsh Arabs or Madan in their own language, were genetically 68% similar to the ancient Sumerians. Specifically, the Y chromosome haplogroup JM267 and the mitochondrial haplogroup HV were identical. This indicates that the direct paternal and maternal lineages have been passed down uninterrupted for 5,000 years. One of the researchers said, actually, the Sumerians didn't disappear, they just became invisible. In the summer of 2023, a geneticist was walking through the marsh waters. A little girl was by his side. Her eyes were bright blue, her body pure white. When the scientist looked at her face, he remembered the stone statues in Uruk, the same facial proportions, the same gaze, the same genetic heritage. The people of Madan still live as the Sumerians did. They build houses of reeds and cover their boats with fish skin, and some of their words are still of Sumerian origin. Ensi, leader, Dilmun, paradise, Madan, swamp people. These words are not just language, a DNA echo, the life of a civilization. You may be related to the people who invented writing. the people who invented the wheel, measured time, and named the stars. Modern genetics shows that Sumerian DNA consists of three main components: Ubaid Neolithic origins, Mesopotamia's first farmers, Zagros migrants, herding communities from the Iranian plateau, Arabian Basin lineages, ancestors of today's people in the Persian Gulf. This mixture created the first genetic fusion in human history, and this fusion laid the foundation for civilization. The LCTP gene found in the Sumerians' genes enabled them to digest milk in adulthood. This gene appears in them for the first time in human history. So, being able to drink milk was not a byproduct of civilization, but a Sumerian legacy. The same genetic code is still present in the Madan people today. This is not just history, it is a biological indicator. The Sumerians were not just a people, they were a memory, they were a life. They built their cities not with stone, but with knowledge. But the thing that carried that knowledge was not a book, it was blood. And now we know that blood is still flowing. The descendants of the Sumerians live on the quiet banks of the Euphrates. The world's first civilization still breathes. To disappear is not always death. Sometimes it is a change of name. Sometimes it is silence. But it is never oblivion, because history is not written on walls. It is written in DNA. Geneticists examined DNA samples extracted from Sumerian remains along three axes: paternal, Y chromosome, maternal, mitochondrial DNA, and autosomal, mixed genome. The results were astonishing. The Sumerians were neither entirely indigenous nor invaders from outside. They were a blend of two worlds. Local Ubaid roots plus Zagros mountain migrants equals the Sumerian gene pool. This genetic fusion created what we call a complex society for the first time in human history. So the Sumerians invented not only cities, but also us. Today, more than 60% of these DNA variants are still carried by the modern Iraqi population, especially in the marshlands. And this genetic continuity is not just a bloodline, it is the lifeblood of a civilization. Scientist Dr. El-Hashimi said, "The Sumerian genetic legacy has not disappeared. It has thinned out, hidden itself, but it is still breathing." There are certain gene clusters that stand out in Sumerian DNA, and each one explains their way of life. One LCTP, the ability to digest milk. At that time, milk was a critical food for survival. Thanks to this gene, Sumerian society had a nutritional advantage even after the agricultural revolution. 2DRD4-7R, the discovery gene. In humans, it triggers curiosity, risk-taking, and the pursuit of innovation. Modern geneticists believe that this gene variant is highly prevalent in Sumerian DNA and may have triggered the initial urge to urbanize. 3MC1R regulates melanin production. The heterogeneity of this gene in the Sumerians indicates that people with light and dark skin lived together. This confirms that their social structure was multicultural. In other words, the Sumerians were not only culturally, but also biologically multi-layered. The disappearance of the Sumerians remains a mystery, but DNA gives us another clue. Around 2000 BC, climate change occurred. The water level of the Euphrates rose, the salt content increased, and the soil became infertile. This environmental disaster slowly destroyed the Sumerian cities, but the people did not die. They migrated. Some went north to Babylon, some went east to the foothills of the Zagros Mountains, and a small group retreated underwater into the swamps. That group was the ancestors of the Madan people. The Sumerians became people of the water, not the land, and for thousands of years the swamps protected them. Wars came and went, they remained. Language leaves traces, just like DNA. Sumerian was an isolated language. It didn't fully resemble any other language, but some words used in the modern dialect today come directly from Sumerian roots. For example, ab, water, lu, man, human, ki, place, land. These words are the same in both Sumerian and modern. This is not just a coincidence, it is linguistic inheritance. Even when a language dies, its genetic memory remains, because traces of the past are embedded in the very structure of our brains. The Sumerians permanently changed 5 things in human history: writing, clay tablets, mathematics, base 60 system, astronomy, the zodiac, time measurement, 24 hours, 360 degrees, social order, the first laws. These ideas are not only culturally, but also biologically present in our lives, because the building blocks of the human brain, learning, planning, symbol creation, evolved genetically, and this evolution began with the Sumerians. In communities descended from them, gene clusters related to abstract thinking are more concentrated. Science calls this cognitive clustering. So the Sumerians' legacy is not just cities, it's the rise of human intelligence. Modern genetic maps show that Sumerian DNA did not remain confined to Iraq. It spread westward to Anatolia and the Mediterranean. It reached eastward to the Iranian plateau. Some genetic sequences have even been detected in northern India. So the Sumerians were not just a people, they were a wave, a DNA wave. And that wave still echoes across the planet today. Some studies have found a low level of Sumerian similarity in the Central Asian gene sequences of Turks. This instantly transforms the concept of the cradle of civilization into the idea of a common root. History is not written solely with victories. There is also tragedy in the story of the Sumerians. Around 1750 BC, the Elamites and Amorites destroyed the Sumerian cities. But here's the irony. The Sumerian people did not disappear. Those who destroyed them genetically mixed with them, so the destruction was actually a union. This cycle repeated itself throughout history. With every war, Sumerian blood spread a little more thinly across the world, but it never disappeared. Like a genetic signature, silent but permanent. Are the Sumerians dead? Yes, they are dead, but their DNA is still with us. It is easy to forget a people, but it is impossible to erase their DNA. The Sumerians were humanity's first mirror, and that mirror is now shining again in laboratories. Their story teaches us something. History is not written in books. It lives in the blood, in cells, in genes, in a silent language. Perhaps humanity truly began with the Sumerians, and it never ended. This is not just a story. This is the rewriting of human history. In the next episode, we will follow the trail of Dilmun, which the Sumerians called the land of the gods. It is described as paradise in legends, but perhaps it was a real place. Subscribe, because the past is not yet over, and we will continue to delve into the depths of the past.